struck me, and this isn't in the written down question, so I'm just asking it off the cuff, but it strikes me that you're very convinced about the value of investing in the early years. We've seen big investments in the early years, and it's the brain science, it's the economics, it's all those arguments. I suppose I was interested in the recognition about the Year 9 experience, about the 10 to 14-year-old adolescent transition. That's also a really important phase of someone's life, and if this Year 9 experience is a symbol of that recognition of that adolescent transition time, I'd be really interested in your sort of thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of this, so I suspect that's come through this week in the media. And just, again, my years teaching and having 3 kids, and anyone who's a parent, and then you look at all of the expert advice, that sort of Year 8, Year 9, that age, I think probably more so for boys, it's, for a lot of them, it's a sort of a black hole. They just become disengaged, and sitting at a desk every day doesn't necessarily hold them and keep them and expand their mind and their sense of purpose and self. So we've announced the Year 9 experience. We're putting a lot of money into it. So it's in money terms, it's around $2,000 extra per Year 9 student per year, and that's going to fund a term of activities which are quite intensive around what we call the Year 9 experience. So they'll be taken out of a school setting for a number of weeks. So a lot of schools already have a camps program for, say, a week. Some already have 2 weeks, some of the better off schools. But this will give every school a minimum of an extra 2 weeks. So I'm a big fan of the outdoor things, the outdoor education, the mountain biking, the bushwalking, the hiking, the orienteering, all of those sort of things. I'm a big fan of kids being out there and cooking their own meals and learning to wash up and keep the place tidy and all of that. Big fan of working in teams so that they learn about teamwork. Big fan of things that test them so they learn about what they can do and resilience and respect for others. So I think this, and the response we've had has been sensational, and from all of the experts. So we'll stagger this in over the next 3 years, so it's a sort of a third, because we've got to build up. The response from kids has been fantastic. My own child's speech night, Nicholas, who's just finished Year 12, I went to their speech night. The kids all make a 30-second statement about what they remember about school, what was the best part. Overwhelmingly, every child said they remember a particular subject, but also the school camp was the best thing they did. They learned to get on, they learned new friends, they learned that they could climb a mountain, they learned that they could ride a mountain bike, they learned they could do things that they never thought they could do. So I think this will be a really big thing, and I think it'll lift up a lot of those kids that at the present just really do drop out, and then they start failing, and then the cycle just continues through to Year 12. So I think it'll make a big difference.
Well, it certainly sounds like a fantastic test of flexible and different approaches to learning.
Yeah. And I'm absolutely sure it'll work.
Yeah. Now we've got a question here for Emma from Brunswick. Afera Victoria covers such a broad range of issues. What is the most important area of investment?
Well, it changes a bit, as you know, Cath, from year to year.
Well, you keep asking us this question. You say, come on, don't give us 60 things, give us 3 or 4.
So it changes from year to year, but if I had to pick out 2 areas which I think have been, well, actually I'll say 3 areas that I think have been really important over the years. Social housing, so the big amount of money that we put aside in the, was it 2007 or 2008 budget, the $500 million when we had a strong, I think that was just provided the foundation. So I think that was big. Second is the place-based approaches, so neighbourhood renewal, and again we've worked closely with you on that, and we've seen that work. I've seen it work in Wendouree, I've seen it work in parts of Latrobe Valley. I think it really works. And then the third area, I think, is what we've talked about already today, and that's early intervention, getting in early, getting in with kids early, bigger investment in the preschool years, picking up the kids that are missing out early. You know, everybody's home circumstances are different, and you know, I know from door knocking as a politician and a former federal MP, I've been into houses and I've I've seen kids that are 3 and 4 year old that have never seen a book, and you think of those children, what their life chances are going to be, and the fact is they need support, early intervention, through preschool, through playgroups, through neighbourhood renewal, to give those families and those kids a better chance than they would otherwise. So I think those 3 areas are the ones that would stand out in my mind.
Thank you. Well, moving on from the early years, the next question is around, particularly posted relating to seniors. So it's a question around protecting around cost of living increases, and I suppose broadly your thoughts about how to support seniors and supporting people on low incomes. We talked a bit about concessions already.
We did a little bit, yeah.
Whether there's anything else there that you'd like to talk about. Well, maybe this might be the opportunity to talk about how to, as well as helping people pay their bill, what are the sorts of things that a re-elected Brumby government would do to help people reduce their bills? So things such as energy efficiency measures, looking at the make good provisions in the Residential Tenancies Act. There's a whole range of things there to support both renters and low income homeowners to actually reduce their bills through energy efficiency and other measures.
So I think with pensioners, there's the range of things we do already, and there's some of the concessions we mentioned before for electricity and for water, and there's rates rebate and so on. So the big addition on that is the summer electricity concession, so that adds another 3 months. So it means now that 9 months out of 12 get that 17.5% concession. So that will help in those areas. I also announced the other day for the stamp duty concession. So this is for pensioners who are, and the only eligibility here is there's a money cap. I think it's $700,000 is the ceiling, and the only eligibility criteria is that you can only ever receive this concession once. But it's for seniors who the family's grown up, the family's moved out of home. You finally got the kids out of home, and you want to move down to a unit out of the big family house. So you can now get a stamp duty concession, which is up to might be 750,000 actually, I think. So you can get that up to that figure. That means for someone buying a house, a unit, sort of $500,000, which is a pretty fancy unit, you're saving about $8,000 on stamp duty. So that's a big concession, most generous in Australia. So we've done that. That's introduced. That starts if we're re-elected, obviously, from July 1 next year. So those things are there. In terms of further assistance in the medium and long term, you mentioned the energy saver incentive. So part of what we've done as our climate change policy is the electricity retailers have to work out ways to save energy consumption in the community. That means that they will be working with households, with community sector like VCOSS and other groups, to provide incentives for families to reduce their energy consumption. So what that'll mean in practice, it might mean programs that assist with changing lighting, with changing glazing of windows, but also appliances, with subsidy and purchase schemes to accelerate the rate at which people are able to get the new appliances, which are much more efficient in the way in which they use electricity or water. So you're going to see something like, I think it's between $100 and $200 million of benefit flow into households each year for the next 4 years. That'll all go into things like reducing energy consumption. As I said, light globes, might be double glazing, might be those sort of things, plus incentive schemes on new appliances. And I just know at our place, buying a new front load washer recently, so it's the best rating you can get. I don't know that it's too kind on the collars of my shirt, but putting that aside, it uses about 40 litres of water a wash compared with 140 for an old top load, and the energy consumption is about half of what our old washer used to be. So this is the area too that we'll continue to push, and there'll be a range of organisations that'll be assisting in providing those services. So I think that'll make a big difference, and then we'd be keen to work in partnership too, again, with VCOSS and potentially other organisations to help get information out as we all face up to this challenge of pressure on energy bills and how we keep them low by being more efficient, I guess, in the way in which we use energy.
Well, and I guess as well the commitment around the target to achieve 5-star energy efficiency as an average for homes as part of the climate change.
So that's all linked up.
strategy.
That's absolutely right. So that's all linked up, and I think one of your viewers or listeners actually asked a question on that. So it's all linked up. It's all going to mean increased investment in these areas to drive energy use down. And I just repeat very quickly what I said before. The trend all around the world is increased pressure on energy prices.
Yep.
And I think in a world which is tackling climate change and trying to bring on more renewable energy, that's not going to go away, and anybody who says it isn't being honest with people about that. So we've all got a challenge to drive down use, to reduce energy bills, and to make sure that we can cut those household energy costs.
Yeah. Now
I'll try and move through a bit quicker.
Yes, we've got so many questions here.
Yeah.
But this one I've got is a question. I might go to the question around community services for people with disabilities, and might come back to the remaining ones. So this is a question from Parkville. The Minister for Community Services has indicated that the chronic underfunding of disability services will be addressed in the next budget if Labor is re-elected, but no firm commitment has been given. Premier, will you make a firm commitment that the funding will be committed in the next budget? We're in the process of analysing commitments from all the parties to disability support services to communicate to our members, and this commitment would be advantageous.
So we mentioned before our support for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and again in terms of the question that's being asked,